everyone. I hope this finds each of you so very well. I'm speaking to you from my studio in West Orange, New Jersey. Absolutely delighted to welcome writer and entrepreneur Inez Ribustello, whose new memoir titled Life After Windows became a national Amazon bestseller within the first week of its launch. Inez will be speaking to us from Tarboro, North Carolina, where she lives with her husband, Stephen, and their 2 children. Inez graduated from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in 1998 with a degree in journalism and mass communications, then left for New York City to pursue a career in the culinary arts. It was there that her love for good wine and good food was born, and she knew deep within herself that working at Windows on the World, on the top floor of the Twin Towers, was where she was meant to be. Inez eventually got her dream job, and for over 2 incredible dream come true years, she lived in New York City. She directed America's largest beverage program at Windows on the World, and she drank wine every day and every night. She learned how to catalog and recognize thousands of wines, and she also learned how to run and manage people and a business to success. Then, on September 11th, 2001, while she was back in Tarboro for her sister's wedding, Inez's dream job evaporated into shattering, thick, black clouds of smoke. The life she'd always dreamed of disappeared in the blink of an eye. By the way, in the spirit of full disclosure, my own 50th birthday celebration took place at Windows on the World. It was fabulous. It was filled with love, music, great food, and great wine, and has become an unforgettable, cherished memory for me and my guests. I'm looking forward to talking with Inez about her love affair with wine, food, and Windows on the World, the ways she was affected by 9/11, how she healed from her all-encompassing grief, and her at times fun, downright funny, poignant, and riveting memoir, Life After Windows, that shares both the realities of her devastating loss and her inspiring journey to healing and rebirth for what is surely going to be a captivating interview. And just off the cuff, everyone, I have to tell you, it is really funny. And I mean, there are parts of it, even though Inez's book addresses such a tragic event, it is downright funny in parts. I found myself laughing out loud. So hi, Inez, a warm welcome to Grief and Rebirth Podcast.
Thank you so much, Irene, for having me. I'm truly honored to be here.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure. So let's start with you describing your life leading up to winning your dream job at Windows on the World.
Yeah, I look back on it and I was almost like a teeny bopper cheerleader type personality. I was in love with life, all of it. I was in love with people. I was never that excited or into making good grades in college. I kind of did that in high school and middle school so that I could get into Carolina. And then once I got there, I, just lived a pretty carefree life. And I call it growing up as a country club Christian. I never doubted faith or doubted God because I didn't really have a reason to. While my parents had divorced when I was quite young, they were both alive. I'd never lost a sibling.
Even though your parents got divorced, I have to say, I couldn't get over how well everyone got along in your family.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so you didn't even have the typical trauma that a lot of kids find with that. Everybody was kumbaya, right?
Right. I think they did a great job at being kumbaya. There was probably a lot that we didn't see, which kudos to my parents for being super mature and the step parents. But yeah, just really happy. I was just this happy, carefree, almost walking along in blinders, just very unaware, and it didn't seem to get affected by much. And so cruise into New York City. I was dating this man I thought I was going to marry, living with 4 other women in an apartment, and didn't the whole goal was culinary school, right? I was going to go to culinary school and then possibly maybe use my journalism degree to write about food, or even better yet, get a show on the Food Network. And again, to talk about how naive I was, thought, yeah, I could just go get a show on the Food Network, like
well, you're cute enough. Come on.
Well, thank you. But yeah, so just kind of excited about possibilities, and ambitious, but like not overly ambitious. I was never going to like give up a night out on the town for to get up early the next day for something that might be competitive. But yeah, just kind of first time I went to north of the Mason-Dixon line was when I moved to New York, and had no problems like being, getting into the city and taking it, by the horns. I loved it. I completely loved it. I loved the anonymity of it. Now all of a sudden people couldn't get in touch with me as easily as they had, and they weren't telling me what to do. And they weren't, I don't want to use the word manipulate, but they weren't like, they didn't have a heavy hand in directing my path. And so while
you were on your own, you were a big girl, you were growing up.
I was growing up. Yeah. So while culinary school was the plan, it really, within days of being there, wine inserted itself with the opportunity to work at Bestsellers. And it wasn't long before I realized that I like to drink more than I like to cook. And that, all of a sudden I'm seeing that there are careers in wine. So,
by the way, reading your book, everyone, it's an education on wine. So if you really want to, besides making you laugh, it's also a wonderful education about the wine. So tell us about your love affair with wine, food, and windows on the world, and describe some of those amazing people you bonded with there who passed during 9/11.
So probably within 9 months of being in the city, I got the job offer to become an assistant cellar master at Windows on the World. And it was instant, immediate connection with all of it. Being literally on top of the world, where you see planes fly beneath you, and you can see all 3 of the bridges on the East River, across to New Jersey on the west side, and then the people. I think we had 80 different nationalities represented in staff, and I was in love with the learning of all these different cultures. And the Muslim population would be in the corridor between the 106th and 107th floors during Ramadan, praying in the direction. And people brought food that they had made from home and shared it. Windows was just this great big family. And whereas wine, I think at the time, especially in New York, had a little bit of pretension to it. I was talking about it to anyone, from the president of the company to the uniform woman, and all of a sudden these people that, weren't identified as wine drinkers were coming up to me and saying, "Hey, I need to take a wine to a party. Could you recommend one?" And they felt so comfortable with me. And I think part of it was because I was learning also. And another part is, I think when you love something, you want everyone else to love it. You don't try to hide it from people.
Oh, yeah, your passion was infectious.
Right. And so it was really neat, like young kids, older people, I would meet them downtown on my day off in a wine shop and help them shop for their wines. And yeah, I was very much in love with the people. And then, the building. I mean, so
It was amazing.
Yeah. And then, once I got promoted, then when I worked at nights, I was able to order off the menu. And, I had, I don't think I'd ever had duck confit until, moving to New York, or so many foie gras and all the things that were not readily available in Eastern North Carolina. And so beautifully, exquisitely prepared.
And presented.
Yeah. And so it's just, how could you not love that? I don't know.
All right. So besides the food and the wine, though, there were certain people who really made their way into your heart.
Yeah.
And you lost them. That was part of your tremendous grief. When that 9/11 happened. Do you want to tell us about one or two or three of those special people?
Yeah, they were, Irene, they were all special to me. And it's a little intimidating to mention three.
If you'd rather not, it's okay too.
Well, no, I just, I'm trying to think which three, I
know you spoke about one woman in your book. Was she your manager or something?
So I spoke about Heather Ho, who was the pastry chef,
right?
Who had. This was tragic. She had just started, and she'd moved from Hawaii or the West Coast. I think she was from Hawaii, but she'd maybe moved from San Francisco, and she was really unhappy because Windows was a production, right? Like, you weren't going in and making 50 desserts a night. You were making 500. And I think it was more corporate than she had anticipated. And so the general manager and the owner had asked me to take her out to eat lunch and just kind of see if I could, because nobody loved that place more than I did. So they were like, if there's anybody who can make her fall in love with it. And so she and I had gone to eat lunch, and she was pretty new, but she said, I'm just not happy here. This is not the job for me. And she'd given notice. And so she was leaving, and I think about that. It was just, had the month or 2 weeks that she'd been given started a little earlier, she would not have been there. And then the two gentlemen who worked with me, Jeff Cole, whose girlfriend is now one of my very best friends, and I dedicated a chapter. And
I remember that, right?
He was, learning. He was a finance guy who had fallen in love with wine and was giving up, a previous career, and he and I were quite close. And then Steve Adams, who was an older gentleman who had said he had never been appreciated at any job until this one, and we just promoted him to beverage manager right underneath. And both of those men were there because I wasn't. That's why they were there that early.
Oh my!
Oh
my God! You could see why you'd be grieving so much. You were so. First of all, you're a people lover, and you're really deeply in love with these people. So after 9/11, you felt so broken. Your dream job is gone, and the people you care deeply about are gone. They're all vanished in the blink of an eye. Would you like to tell us about, I know, your unbelievable grief, and how that expressed itself every day?
Yeah, it was so foreign, Irene. I was
all of a sudden, this bubble you'd grown up with was completely, your whole world was
right. Formed. Nothing felt the same. It was it just took it almost it felt like it was sucking life out of me every day. Just whatever it was. I could not find something to be joyful about. And again, historically, I had not been an angry person, and the anger, just anger. And that was so foreign to me that then when I would feel that anger at such a high intensity, then I would just become incredibly sad. And I was talking to my friend last week who said, I had no idea you cried that much. He goes, but you talk about crying, and I am a crier. But this was waking up in the morning and I was crying. I was literally crying when my eyes opened. And then just this exhaustion. I mean, all I wanted to do was sleep, because if I was asleep, at least I wouldn't be.
Amazing you could even fall asleep.
Right. Well, there was a really unhealthy amount of drinking so that I could sleep.
You're anesthetizing yourself.
Yeah, I've never been a pill person, and gratefully I didn't, I didn't have that. My mother took all the pills that the doctor prescribed for me. So, but yeah, I was angry, and somebody asked me about being fearful one time, and I do remember seeing planes flying low, and I would duck. If I was down the street, I would get behind a bench or something. But fear of dying was not what I had. Like, there were many days where I was like, this would be so much better if I was dead. If I had been up there and lost my life, I would not be experiencing this hell on earth.
The pain. You were in
that
such
is my
pain.
reality. Yeah.
So, but one of the beautiful things in this, as you're describing how you were crying and what you went through, is one of the things that helped you get through was your relationship with your husband, Stephen. And so would you like to tell us how you met him and the incredible ways he was there for you? He gets 5 stars for how he was there for you while you were grieving. My goodness.
So he was the sommelier at Windows, which is how I met him. And
which is by the way, you learn in the book, that's a very big deal, everyone. And that's something I learned. I had no idea how arduous it is to become a sommelier. That's really fascinating.
Yeah, and he is one of the best tasters I've ever met, and I've met quite a few. And Stephen and I, polar opposite in that he identified as an atheist. I think he would now say he's agnostic, but and pretty, pessimistic or cynical, just in general. And he told me when we first met and started hanging out that he was like, I don't think I'll be alive past 30. He kind of lived on the edge, and wasn't always careful in everything he did. So, and then 9/11 happens, and the way we dealt with it, he was such a rock. I'm sure he was dealing with his own feelings in his way, but they were very internal. He would just hold me and let me cry, and he never wavered in terms of he never said, I can't do this anymore. I had to have been the most depressing person, to live with and to be with. And he never looked away.
That's amazing. That's fantastic.
I don't know how he did that.
That's amazing. So now you begin to heal your grief and move towards rebirth, which is a process. So you want to talk to us about how love was reborn through your children who provided you with renewed insights on life?
Yes.
Your favorite topic, I'm sure.
Yes. The irony is not lost on me that the universe handed Cynthia to us on September 12th.
Wow.
And
how much after the original 9/11 did she arrive?
3 years and 1 day. 3 years and 1 day. And all of a sudden this treasure is handed to us. And I think part of it is, surviving as new parents. We were forced to think about other things.
For sure.
Right. And so part of it was that. And then the other is I started feeling hopeful again. And I had not felt that feeling for 3 years. And so hope is big, you know.
It's true. It's true. And then you have a little boy too, right?
Yes, and he was born in 2007, and he has he's the definition of joy. I mean, he just wide open and very happy, and you know, just a cuddler. And they were. It was almost like they knew when they came into the world that I needed their love and affection as much as they needed it.
That's so fabulous. I can relate because I have 3 grandchildren who I adore, and I can relate to that also. You have some wonderful stories about growing exciting new businesses with Stephen, as now you're starting to heal and move on. And of course, your businesses would focus on good food and good wine and provide you with a new sense of purpose. Would you like to share that with us?
Sure. We opened on the square in October of 2002. We are getting ready to celebrate 20 years in the fall. And you know, that was, Stephen and I call that our first child, actually. And
So that was your restaurant.
Right.
Our
restaurant.
And it was on a square, like that's where it was located, right?
Right. On the courthouse square. And, you know, Stephen gave my dad an 18-month commitment. He did not think that our town would support it, but it's been incredibly supported by the people all over Eastern North Carolina. And I think my dad was right with if you build it, they will come. You know, people were looking for something that's different. And again, you know, great food and great wine shouldn't be pretentious, right? Like if people weren't buying wine in Tarboro, North Carolina before 2002, either it was because they were afraid of it, or there wasn't a place that like educated you about it. And we've been super intentional about both of those. Like, we want you to know as much, if not more, about the wine, and we want to make sure that there's no pretense involved. So that's been very fun. We opened Tarboro Brewing Company 6 years ago, to be honest, Irene, because there were plenty of people in our community who didn't come to On the Square because wine isn't their thing and food isn't their thing. And so beer seemed like another way to grow a business and engage community. And that has just been unbelievable, watching people that we've never seen in the restaurant come to the brewery.
You've got everything covered there. Right? And by the way, to everyone on YouTube who's watching this, I'm looking at Inez with her earrings, and at first I thought TBC was to be continued, but I realized they're for Tarboro Brewing Company. So, well done, Inez.
Good eye. Good eye.
So when you turned 40, well, let me go back. I want to ask this question. It eventually became clear to you that timing is everything, and the universe is always working in ways we can never truly understand. So how did this new insight play out when you and Stephen found your forever home? That's a great story.
Oh my gosh. It you know, so
someone was smiling on your shoulder. Someone had you covered.
For sure. We were coming back from a wine trip in Oregon, and we had a layover in Texas. And I called my dad, I think he was keeping the kids. And he said, there's a woman who's moved here from Michigan and she wants to buy your house. And I said, well, our house isn't for sale. And he said, well, then make her an offer that she won't take. So Stephen and I made this offer and she took it. And so we all of a sudden don't have a house. And we had passed this house ever since we moved to Tarboro, and we called it the ugliest house in Tarboro. I mean, it's a flat, you know, it looks one story from the street view, and just not flattering, not a pretty house. And we would always talk about who's going to buy that ugly house. And it had been on the market for 3 years when we sold ours. And one morning, Stephen and I got up and I said, do you know what house I keep thinking about? Because we've been looking at houses. And he said, the one on South Howard? And I said, yes. And he goes, I've got it in my mind too. It was wild. And so we called my dad, who's a realtor, and said, hey, can you take us? And we opened the doors, and they're floor to ceiling windows that overlook this hill and this creek. And all of a sudden I started panicking, like, we have to get it. Somebody's going to get it before. And the gentleman, Mr. Raskin, who was the first Jewish person to build in Tarboro, he and his wife had moved to a patio home, kind of retirement community. And he loved this house. It was his baby. And I said, see, we can't afford what he's asking for it. And this is after it had been reduced over 3 years. And so we put in what we could afford, and he accepted it.
Wow.
And Irene, he died a month later.
Oh my gosh. And
a few weeks after he died, a bird got in the house, and I just knew it was Mr. Raskin.
Oh, I've got chills. That's a beautiful story. So now you've got your beautiful dream home. Everything's working out, but you turn 40 and you go into a personal crisis, which eventually led you and Stephen into therapy. What would you like to tell us about that time in your life? And how did being in therapy improve your marriage? I tell people all the time, don't suffer, go into counseling, talk about it.
We should have gone into therapy the moment that we moved back to Tarboro. I mean, what was interesting with we had wonderful counselors. I saw one by myself, and then we saw one together, and then Stephen ended up seeing the one we saw together by himself. And there was so much baggage rooted in our parents' divorce. Like 9/11 was some of it, but in terms of how we related to one another, like it went back to the scripts that we were handed by our parents.
Both of you and Stephen had parents who had divorced, right?
Oh yeah. And my mother's been divorced twice, and so has his. And we were not we didn't have the tools in our toolbox to be healthy partners and healthy parents. And he had resisted it for a long time. And then when we separated, and often I hear that's what happens. It comes too late because somebody says, I'm not going to do it. And then when really all the shit hits the fan, then a lot of times it's too late. And so when we went into therapy, it was for co-parenting. But the therapist said, just so you know, I use the same therapy for co-parenting as I do for reconciling. And we did the work. I mean, we did a lot of work, and it was.
What do you call work?
Brutal.
What do you call the work?
I mean, we had to listen to one another. Like, this is how, and the therapist coached us through the whole thing. But, when this happens and you respond in this way, it makes me feel this way. One thing that Stephen would say to me is, you're so busy all the time that I don't even feel like I count. And I had to sit with that. And one thing that came out of it was, when I'm a workaholic, when at 6:00 the phone went off, the phone was no more, and I didn't look at it again until 7. And it was just things you have to, no one's perfect, right? So I can't go in and say, well, Stephen, like, part of it was me really hearing him and like being empathetic to, these are his feelings. Like, I can't tell him what he is feeling. If he feels it, he feels it, and vice versa. And so it was, what was so beautiful about it is that we came out of it stronger than ever. And personally, I became a very different person who I'm so much more prouder of.
Well, you're conscious now.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. I mean, that's what I would liken it to, because I've been in therapy also. You become much more conscious about the consequences of what you're saying and your behaviors. And, you have some choices in there. So now, what inspires you to, your memoir? I loved it. It's remarkable. It's well written. It's funny. It's really interesting. So what inspired you to write it? And it's so great about how it describes both your heartbreak and your healing process. So tell us about that.
You know, I get great therapy out of writing. And
Well, you started, you majored in journalism, right? So in the beginning,
yes,
you were a writer.
yes. And I had a blog for a long time that focused on the master sommelier path, which people became very engaged with the blog. And so part of it was, I need to write this for myself and for my children, because I want to have out there this journey so I can look back on it and say, like, you can get through anything. But the bigger part was, if there's one person that can read this and see a little light at the end of whatever darkness they are experiencing, it would be selfish not to write that and put that out there. You know, I mean, and I love that about what you're doing with your podcast. Like, the only thing that we are really created to be is to be helpers and lovers of our neighbors. And so,
well, you're like, you gives people hope. This podcast is to give people hope.
Exactly. No matter how dark or how deep or how much despair you are experiencing, there is a way out. It looks different for every single person.
Right. Right.
And you're not alone, right? You're just not alone.
You're not. Exactly. Inez, I loved your story about Tarboro Brewing Company, exemplified by your earrings. So, and you've done a lot of personal, and I see you're also talking to us from your car. So you must have.
Sure, yes. You are. I've been selling beer all day today, Irene.
So, what would you like to tell us? I know that you have, you're very involved civically. That's part of your personal growth. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, not everybody likes this part.
Well, you're talking to a northerner, so I definitely do.
Yeah, you know, I mean, here's the thing. Like, building businesses is great, right? I'm not going to take anything away from people who build successful businesses, but I didn't move back to the town where I was born and raised for that small of a thing, right? Like, I want to change systems. I want to break down barriers. I want to be very much a part of the growth of everyone. And while a business often gives you a platform, like, and I'm grateful for that platform, at the end of the day, like, my joy comes in seeing others who have not been given the same opportunities or the privileges that I've been given rise. And what I didn't know, and again, this was a little bit of me being like living with blinders on, is that, you know, the majority of my Black friends who grew up in Tarboro with me, they don't feel this love of Tarboro like I do. And when I talked to them about that, they're like, yeah, you know, our experience growing up was very different from yours. And I don't want that to be the case for the future generations.
So you're enlightening people through your company.
Right.
You have events and you have different people coming together. I think it's so wonderful. That might be part of your sole purpose now.
You need to come visit.
I would love to do that. I would, and when you come to New York again, hey, we'll have a glass of wine.
I would love that.
I live right outside the city. So tell us about healing. And I just love this comment that you made in your book. It says, change can be scary. It can be sad. It can even overwhelm, but it can also be very, very good. So why, in your opinion, does the healing process, which encourages people and enlightens them about making change in their lives, make a person stronger and wiser? What would you like to say about that?
Yeah, I think about that all the time. And I think, I go back, I start with my uncle who said in a sermon, like, you can't experience God's grace until you experience true pain. And so that's true. Like I didn't really understand the grace of the world, the grace of the universe, the grace of God until coming out on the other side of 9/11. But I think, wisdom directly relates to empathy. And it's very difficult to be empathetic if nothing has ever kind of knocked you off your balance in whatever way. Maybe you lose something that was like, you lose the job that you loved, or lose the boyfriend to someone else, or whatever that is. Doesn't necessarily have to be death. Although I do think when you lose people, you have this this kind of breaking of spirit that once it heals or comes back to life, you see the world very differently. You see people very differently. And I think wisdom is, hey, that person may be slamming on the horn right now, flipping me off and acting like a complete jerk. And I have the option to lay on the horn right back, flip him off, whatever. Or I can smile. Hey, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Or, it's that simple. But I just think often healing, if you want to heal, you have to see bigger.
Yeah, it gives you a different perspective. I think it gives you more of an overview as opposed to taking things so bitterly and personally, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So now everybody's in love with Inez. So tell us all the ways for the members of our Grief and Rebirth podcast audience to connect with you, your book, which is a terrific story. So go ahead and tell us how they can, what's your website, how do they find you, Inez?
Instagram is my preferred method of posting and reading. And so it's very creative. It's Inez Ribustello.
I'm going to spell that for everyone. I-N-E-Z. Go ahead.
Ribustello. And in my profile, it has the links to Charbor Brewing Company on the Square and our satellite brewery, TBC West.
That's great. And what is the Inez tip for finding joy in life?
Whenever you are down, do something nice for someone else, and you will just be joyful every single time. It doesn't have to be purchasing a gift. It could be taking in your neighbor's trash can from the side of the road. But when you are doing something nice for someone else, joy is just for sure there to follow.
That is very wise. I found that too. Inez, Life After Windows leaves its readers feeling positive and hopeful about lessons learned and memories cherished. It is a captivating memoir, and you are an inspiring role model. Thank you from my heart for sharing your moving journey from devastating loss to healing and rebirth, and also for enlightening all of us about good food and good wine. Everyone read the book, you'll learn a lot. And here's a loving reminder, everyone, that you can see the show notes and all Grief and Rebirth podcast episodes on ireneweinberg.com, and make sure to follow us and like us on social at Irene S. Weinberg on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and especially on YouTube. Like, subscribe, and hit notify to make sure you'll get inspiring new interviews like this one with Inez coming your way. Thank you so much. As I like to say, to be continued. There's also Tarboro Brewing Company, and there's to be continued. Many blessings, and bye for now.